Welcome to Mindfulness Manufacturing. My name is Trevor Blondeel. Spending 25 years in manufacturing, I discovered the real impact we have on turnover, communication, and the ability to manage change is how we show up. That's the essence of emotional intelligence. In each episode, we bring a guest or message to expand your skills, engage your people, and grow your organization. So let's jump in. Today we have Noah Graff, host of Swarfcast. He's got a podcast that helps professionals in precision machining succeed in their careers. He's a blogger and an editor for today's machining world. But most interesting, he's a treasure hunter of manufacturing. Noah, welcome. And what is a treasure hunter in manufacturing?
Oh, thank you for having me on the show. This is so much fun to be on somebody else's podcast, particularly somebody like yours goes into all kinds of interesting conceptual stuff, under the surface, which I guess that's what treasure hunting is really about. It deals with a few things. Okay, so number one, many years ago when I was going into the business, it's a family business, the machinery, the used machine tool business, started by my grandfather 80 years ago. I wasn't sure if I wanted to do it. I was like, I'm a film major in college, and I was into making documentaries, making documentaries and other things. And I was seeing an analyst at the time, and we were talking. I was making this movie at the time about Ferris Bueller's Day Off. It was about all the locations of the movie. Wherever, favorite. Yeah, like if we got a Ferrari replica and we went around the city, but everything was like, okay, where was this shot? Where was this dance scene shot? And I was like going with my cameraman, on location, trying to figure out what yards they were in, whatever. And then I was talking to him about going into the machinery business. And he's like, well, you're a treasure hunter. There's some similarities. There's some parallels here. Like when you're solving this puzzle, making a film, or when you are looking for an interesting piece of equipment, because we travel around the world and go to all kinds of interesting places that you would never expect to find stuff. And when you use the term treasure hunter, it also puts your mind in a different state, kind of romanticizes it. I go buy dirty, oily crap that nobody wants and then sell it to somebody else for more money than I bought it for. And, in some cases, that's what it is. But you can also look at it as totally different concept. This is something that other people don't know what it's worth. They don't know where to find it. You found one of the few around in the world, and then you're going to buy it and sell it to somebody else that can't buy a new machine or can't find a new machine, and you're going to help them carry out their dream of having a machining company. So it's treasure. It's not just like shuffling some money around or taking from one person and giving to another. It's and it sometimes really does seem like, back in the 90s, we were buying these old machines, so back, I guess, in the 50s and 60s, the United States we were building up another arsenal in case, we had another war. And there were these huge multi-spindle screw machines. So we specialize in these mechanical older equipment. We do more new stuff too, but there are these machines called cones or conomatics. And they were part of the US's arsenal, and they were in these caves in Kansas, which underground, like perfect heat control. And you had to go through, you had to go through various government channels to get down there. Literally going in caves and buying these machines that other people just didn't know about. That's how can you get as you can't get more literal than that.
No, that's the whole the fun of someone else's junk is someone else's treasure. And we talk a lot about just mindfulness on here, having a clear mind, not too much in your head at once, so you can concentrate. And when we do 5S and workplace organization, it's the same mindset of, hey, if you're not using that equipment, somebody else maybe could.
Yes.
And and what do we do with that other than just scrap it out? And we look at recycling and the long-term mindfulness of our environment, and what a great contribution to the manufacturing community to bring people together like that. But the real reason that I was more curious about Noah, is it's a good link with manufacturing and the equipment. I'm a big Carol Dweck fan. and her growth mindset. And you use a terminology I don't really hear too much, which is a serendipity mindset.
Yeah.
So for our listeners, and our listeners are driving into a manufacturing plant, and how does this apply to me? Can you tell us more about that, and how could that maybe relate to someone in a manufacturing plant?
Absolutely. Well, I think this is, I mean, it's just beyond manufacturing and beyond, it's just business and life. Sometimes the things that happen, I'll bring it to the machinery business first. It's you go somewhere looking for a machine or go somewhere looking to sell a machine. And then it turns out the person isn't interested in what you're selling, but you look over in the corner of the room and you see this older machine that's not doing anything. And you go, oh, what's that? And they go, oh, you're interested in that? We haven't used that in a while. And we go, yeah, well, maybe. It's things like yesterday I was, it could be as small as just learning something new that you wouldn't have gotten a chance. Yesterday I was caught in traffic and it was slow enough that I was messing around with my apps on my phone. And I wanted to prepare a little bit more for this show. I'm just fuel for great conversations. And that wouldn't have happened. I probably wouldn't have been messing around with my phone had I not decided to randomly, try this thing and take advantage of being out of my normal paradigm. Things always like this happen. This whole serendipity, for people that aren't really that familiar with the term, it's being in the right place at the right time. And the thing is, you have to create that right place. Otherwise, you have to do certain things to create the right place. And then you have to be in the right state of mind to receive it and to go, oh, this is an interesting opportunity. I get a chance to listen to Trevor's podcast right now. So, there are certain things you can do to do this. And this is stuff that it's very useful in machinery business and business, et cetera. So
I like the whole aspect of not only you need to be in the right place, what you're saying, Noah, is that you need to have the right mindset as well. Like like you said, you got to be looking in the corner for that other piece of equipment that I wasn't really looking for, but I came here anyway, and I found this. And so that's a good, because
if you're walking on the street and you walk on top of $1 or $10 bill, and then the next person goes and they happen to be looking down and paying attention, they just got lucky and found $10 and you didn't find anything.
So is it lucky or is it mindfulness?
No, it's a state of mind. Or you go into a coffee shop and there's one seat there and you have to sit across from somebody. You can sit across from somebody and play with your phone the whole time and not see anything special in the situation. Or you could go, oh, well, I'm going to talk to this person, and who knows, maybe this person is got an amazing opportunity, wants to offer you a job, wants to tell you about something that you never knew about. And if you weren't in the right mindset to look at this opportunity, then you get nothing out of it. You'd probably just be unhappy about it, but instead it could be a great thing. So yes, it's really all about your state of mind. I interviewed a guy. I got into this when I heard him on a podcast. It's a guy named Christian Bush, and he wrote so wait, the book you were holding up, that's the Serendipity Mindset?
Well, I'm a fan of Carol Dweck, and she has the growth mindset.
Oh, okay. This guy wrote a book called The Serendipity Mindset.
Okay, yeah. See, I hadn't heard of that. And Carol's more around, and she's very renowned in the fact of either you're fixed, so things are limited and finite, or you have a growth mindset, and your ability to learn or what you see in others or your kids is infinite, because it can be anything. And so I just haven't heard the serendipity one.
Yeah. Well, that's what this is about. It's about being in that right mindset. And then this guy's got strategies of interesting things you can do to bring about it. He's got, first one thing is called serendipity bombs. So say you're a factory looking for a piece of equipment, or you're a machinery dealer looking for a piece of equipment, or say you're writing a book and you're looking for people to be in your book resources who can help you. You pick out 6 people and you contact them, write them emails, people who are long shots, but maybe 1 out of 6 of them gets back, and it's a huge difference. And so you're just throwing like bombs, like in football. And if one of them happens, then all of a sudden you've found luck, right? So in
Found
the
luck.
machine tool business, sometimes we'll have some interesting kind of equipment to sell, and we know so and so is interested in this, so we'll call 5 different people, or somebody tells us they're looking for something, and we'll go to a few people in our contacts and look. Or maybe we'll just put a bulletin online on various sources and say, or you could put a bulletin on LinkedIn or whatever. These are things that you can do, particularly now with such communication we have. You can create serendipity by just using tricks like this. Another thing I love, it's so cool. It's something called serendipity hooks. So this is where, when you're having a conversation, you want to create as many nodes as you can to try to create this lucky thing from happening. So for instance, if somebody asks you what you do, now I don't like that question myself. I find it, what are they trying to evaluate me? Like, it's not, and I don't hold it against people that do it, because I feel like they're just trying to make conversation sometimes, and they're trying to show interest in you, and this is just something that comes to them. But also there's something, sort of like you feel like you're being evaluated. But in any case, if somebody asks you what you do, you don't say, well, I buy and sell machine tools. I say, well, I buy and sell used machine tools for a living, and I have a podcast about machining business, and I happen to be really into traveling the world, and I'm a salsa dancer. And all of a sudden, like, all of those things are way out in there. Maybe, somebody is interested in the machinery business. Maybe often you tell people I am a machine tool dealer, and they go, huh?
Yeah.
So all of a sudden you have all these different things possible, and people's minds get racing as far as, well, I love salsa dancing. Oh my God. And then all of a sudden you start talking about it, and you develop this connection, and then it could lead to something totally different.
You just got to come in with that mindset of just being a little bit more open, be a little more interesting. And sometimes I like to use the phrase, hey, what do you like doing for fun? And sometimes I get a weird look, right? But sometimes people will talk about their work. Sometimes they'll just talk about something outside, but it's just,
if you ask questions, I as I said, I listened to this last podcast you did about the guy asking questions. And I mean, that is a huge piece of it, asking questions about other people and seeing what that can spark in you. But at the same time, with the serendipity hooks, that's one place where, all right, I'm gonna give you, because sometimes you're asking questions and it just goes into a vacuum. Sometimes maybe they need a little spark for the conversation.
It depends on their mindset. Some things I got to be careful of, Noah, is that sometimes I try to create serendipity where it's not.
What do you mean?
I may ask someone more questions about themselves, but they don't really want to talk about themselves that much. They got something else on their mind. And so it's just kind of like also kind of following the universe on, what are the opportunities that maybe I don't see. And one of the biggest coaching conversations we have, internally in manufacturing, where I could tie into a serendipity mindset and maybe some bombs for some listeners, is if you're looking for different opportunities within your manufacturing organization or within the field, right? That's probably one of the biggest tips that I would see from a manufacturing leader, is just saying, hey, talk about your interest in, progressing through the organization. Maybe it's project management. Maybe you want to get into, into new installs, or, redeploying equipment, and work with Noah.
And
you
throw out ideas to them, and maybe that'll cause them to start thinking about it. And maybe when you give them ideas, all of a sudden you'll come up with more ideas just by doing,
creating those conversations. And we've talked about this on the past episodes. We get caught in the four walls, I always call, because I was in there for many years.
What do you mean by the four walls?
Well, we go into our manufacturing plant, and we're so consumed with our safety and our quality, our productivity, and our people that we don't really look outside those four walls. And you only can find so much serendipity within your four walls. So the more you can, get yourself outside, whether it's a manufacturing association, a community, volunteering, just networking with other manufacturers, it's amazing what happens. So I got my own story. A couple of weeks ago, I went to the Chapter Leader Institute event in Austin, Texas. And the one, it was all for the up and coming presidents. I'm for the Kentucky, Indiana, and Tennessee area. And it was for the chapter leaders, the local chapter leaders. And so we're all there. And the one guy from Minnesota was late on the first day. And my mom was born in Minnesota. And I know you're a Chicago guy. I don't know how much of a Bears fan you are, but I bleed purple since I've been born. It's a painful addiction to follow them. But although this year has been better. And I'm like, oh, I want to meet this guy from Minnesota just because it's Minnesota. So start talking to him. Got a little bit of, hey, so what do you speak on? What are you doing? It's like, oh, I do a lot of training with manufacturing supervisor. I'm like, really? That's crazy because I work with manufacturers as well.
Exactly. And you wouldn't have known had you not actually asked.
Yeah. I wanted to talk about the Minnesota Vikings and he's not even a fan. So it quickly shifted. And the greatest part was that I guess kind of got to go back to my same repeated mindsets that I have. And I believe that in manufacturing, how we show up impacts on how people feel, and how we make them feel determines the extent they're going to engage with us. And his name's Jason Hunt. And Jason, if you're listening, I'm so glad I met you, is that he says, hey, do you have a podcast? And I'm like, yeah. And here he's heard of my podcast and had used it in some of his training. And so now I'm going to, maybe I can help him with different areas of training there. And that whole serendipity was just that moment. And that's why I was really interested in, man, you can separate yourself in anything. And whether it's buying and selling machines, leading a manufacturing plant, but this whole serendipity mindset, this is a gem, Noah.
Yeah. Hopefully, if you're up for it, we can have you on our podcast. And
all right.
I mean, and it's just really the way you look at things. I mean, honestly, I found your podcast because I was in this podcast accelerator program. I found the podcast accelerator program because it was like a Friday or Saturday night, and I was just messing around on my phone, and I saw this paid Instagram ad by this guy. He's like, is your podcast not performing the way you want? So then I decided to eventually do that. And then one of the things in there is that, they tell you, well, to grow your podcast, you got to get on other people's shows. And so then what they do is they have this service where you give them like a bunch of people who have been on your show, and then they'll go and their researchers will send you back people whose shows they've been on. And then you can write to them and you can say, hey, well, I had Jason Zenger on my show, which you had on your show. He was like my third guest or something. And he told me, I actually ran into him after 4 years the other day. And he's like, yeah, your two shows are the only ones I've ever been on. He's got a big show, but of his own. But anyways, I mean, you just trace, one thing after another. And is it luck? It's interesting, language. I love language. It's interesting when you talk to other people from other countries and you see how things translate, because there was this guy, he bought, talk about weird treasure, there was this machine, this Japanese multi-spindle screw machine we had. There was only like probably 5 in the United States. And somehow we came across this because another guy had called us about something else and whatever. So now we had this machine and we could not get rid of it. And then there was this guy named Pedro from Peru, and Pedro calls us about this other thing. And then we remembered we were trying to sell him this other machine a while ago. And Pedro, then my dad, I work with, he tells him about this Shimada machine. And Pedro is like, yeah, that sounds interesting. So he just flies up from Peru to look at this oddball machine that nobody wants because they can't support it here. But I guess in his mind is, well, they're not going to support it in Peru either. So what's the difference, right? And I asked him I said, this is serendipity. It says, I said, well, how do you say serendipity in Spanish? He says, destino, like destiny, which it's sort of a false, I don't know. Is it a false cognate? Like, are they exactly the same? Destiny and serendipity? It's kind of one of those things where you think about it and you go, well, I don't know. It is sort of the same, right? Yeah. It's a little more dramatic, destiny, but it's always destiny that I'm here on your show and get to meet you, and you come in thinking you're going to do one thing. I'm going to talk about one thing to you, and then we end up talking to something else. And I'm sure sounds like you didn't really know what you were going to talk about when I first contacted you. Did you?
Yeah, no. And I think that's what that whole other mindset for people is, that moments I think of is we get a lot of temporary workers in manufacturing. And sometimes we just get busy and we don't always dive into everybody. Well, he's not really full time here. It's kind of like those conversations with whether that's a cleaning staff, whether that's a temporary worker you just got in, that's where these moments happen, right? It's not where you think it's going to happen.
Yes.
But it's like, if you can, like, that's why I like your attitude, Nora, is that you can keep your mindset open. If you keep that open, that, hey, if I'm curious and I have good intentions, that the universe can be a beautiful place, and there's lucky and there's also having some intention. So I think we all need a little bit of both. Leave us with your favorite treasure hunting story. Give me one last quick story on what's one maybe machine that you found that was just one that's you like to tell.
Well, I was trying to think about that. So many things. One thing came to mind. So we go through times where sometimes we're selling machines in other countries, and we had this machine. It's called an index CNC screw machine, and this is a very fancy machine. This was kind of an older fancy machine. It was from like 1999 or something. But anyways, I found this machine. They're hard to find. There's only a few around the world that were available, and told this Brazilian customer about it. This machine was in Germany, and we decided we're going to meet there. We get to Germany. We wait a couple hours to get to this machine, look at the machine. He likes it. He says, all right, give me 3 days to think about it. Tell the owner, I say, can you please hold it for us? Can we reserve the machine? Sure, you will reserve the machine, right? One thing I've learned over the years, you cannot reserve a machine generally.
Somebody walks in with cash.
Even with us, I mean, yeah, we'll reserve a machine, but if somebody offered twice for the machine, I might go, I don't know. Well, can you? Yeah, I don't know. Anyways, sure enough, next day I call the guy, the German with the machine for some reason, and he goes, "Oh, I'm sorry, I've sold it." Oops. So we traveled all the way to Germany for this machine. But one thing I like to do is when I would travel a lot and go to Europe, for instance, we'd always leave a lot of time left, leave an extra week, because you never know what else might pop up when you're there, right?
Absolutely.
You're in Germany, maybe we had another good customer in Barcelona, and I call him up. I just got off with the German who I was so pissed off at. I'm sitting in bed. I call my friend Javier up in Barcelona. I say, hey, I'm in Germany. I have a little time. Do you have any machines you have for sale? He says, well, actually, I think I have one of these Index MS42s for sale. Same exact machine.
I love it.
So I'm like, all right, I'm getting on a plane. Go over there, interested. The machine is good, better price than the other one. I call up Rogério in Brazil, and I'm like, hey, we got this machine. He's like, all right, well, that's good. I need a little time, before I can come back to Spain. And so double bonus, I'm in Barcelona, like how awesome is this? Like my favorite place. I go home. Finally, Rogério a couple weeks later can go. And my wife, she just lost her job, which she really didn't like at the time. And she had nothing to do. And I was like, hey, I'm going to Barcelona to try to sell this machine. Why don't you come? We weren't married or anything, but we like to say this was our first honeymoon. Both went all around Spain and looking at machines and messing around on the beach and everything, sold the machine. Did quite well. That was, it was serendipity that she lost her job right then. Yes. She got to go on this like 2.5 week vacation. Serendipity that I got to stick around Spain and make a little bit more money on the machine. And we developed this new relationship with the guy who bought it. And it's all how you look at it, right? And if you're seeing like this is an opportunity.
It's all part of mindfulness, mindset, serendipity. This has been great. Noah, if our listeners want to hear a little bit about your podcast and maybe if they have a machine that they need or they're buying, we're going to leave the links in the show notes. Where do they find you?
Thanks. Great. Right. So if they want to, if they need a used machine tool, for turning or milling, you go to graffpinkert.com, Graff as in Frank, Pinkert.com. And then if you want to read our blogs, etc., today'smachiningworld.com. And if you want to listen to the podcast, and these are podcast listeners, so I'm assuming you guys might be interested, go to Swarfcast. And Swarf, it's for the chips and all the grime that's in the belly of the machine. That's where the word comes from. So it's SWARF and then cast, Swarfcast. I hope you guys will come check it out. If you're looking for this episode, the one where we talk about serendipity, search for Christian Bush or serendipity when you go on the podcast. But otherwise, look, you're in manufacturing, machining. There's a good chance you'll like it.
Right on. I certainly do.
I thank you so much. This was so much fun.
Right on. Thanks so much, Noah. Hey folks, appreciate you taking the time to join us today. If you enjoyed this episode, share it with someone. Haven't subscribed yet? Do it now. Remember, if you want results, the key is increasing your awareness of how you show up.